Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. We've got the chassis rolling on the Grand Hauler, but before we do a bit of a test run we need to put the body together. First though, the manual wants us to paint the body, but I think that would be a little bit silly. It's always a good idea to build up as far as you can without making anything permanent, so avoid gluing things. Then you can make sure everything fits, fettle anything and fill excess holes. We've got the decals to do too, but the same applies. After that we're on to step 50, making up the handles and mirrors. There's a few bits of bent wire with threaded ends. We need the 2 mirror mounts, the big ones, and we need 2 of the grab handles, the small ones. For screws there's 8 M2 by 4. For the nuts we've got 8 M2 plain nuts, and we also need 4 of these little mounts. That just leaves the plastic. The mirrors are made of several bits, but they all need gluing, so for now we will just be using the R5s, the big boxy bit. Each of the wire bits needs 2 nuts fitting. They just need to be threaded on just up to the end of the threads. When they're mounted to the body there will be another set of nuts on the inside to clamp them in place. They'll probably work loose when they're fitted, so we need to use a little bit of thread lock. Smear some on the exposed thread above the nuts and wind the nuts over the thread lock. It will do the job and there won't be much left on the threads to contaminate the plastic of the body. On the back of the mirrors there's 2 mounting points with a slot down the middle. The wire goes in the slot and then we use 2 of the metal straps and small screws to hold it all together. The screws only need to be done up so the heads are nicely seated. We want a little bit of friction, but we still need the mirrors to be able to rotate if they get knocked. We just need to install the Loctite and the 2 nuts and we've got an assembly ready to go. Just need to make a second one. Nice! When we do the final body build, we'll glue the rest of the bits together to finish the job. But for a dry build, that's about as far as we can go. Step 51. Fitting the bits. This time we need 3 8mm self-tappers, 8 M2 plain nuts, G11 a small plastic nut driver, all the windows, the windscreen and the 2 side ones, and of course we need the body itself, which is never going to fit into frame with that angle. So here we go, a nice wide shot. First we'll install the side handles. All we need to do is pop the threaded ends through the holes in the body and install the M2 nuts on the inside using the little nut driver. When we reinstall them after the paint we'll need to use a little bit of thread lock, but since we're going to be taking them off again we might as well leave them dry for now. The side windows are pretty neat. They're a good fit in the window frames in the body. The neat bit though, they don't have separate screws for mounting. It's the mirror mounts that hold them in. We just pop the mounts through the holes in the body and the window and install the 2 M2 nuts. Again, some thread lock would be a good idea when we get to that final build. The windscreen is a bit more traditional. The body has 4 mounting posts that the windscreen slips over. For now, we only need to install the screws in the roof mounts. Be very careful you pick the right length screws here. If you use screws that are a bit too long, they'll push up the plastic, making little inverse dents. That's that bit then. They do look rather good, being just slightly grey smoked. Step 52. We need 6 2x8mm self-tappers, the headlight buckets Q14 and 15, the 2 inner bits of the exhaust stack Q2 and 3, the covers for the bottom, 2 S10s, the headlight LED holders H3, and a pair of K1s, the fake 5mm LEDs to space off the holders. In this step and the next one we will be making assemblies in pairs, left and right. So rather than repeat myself we will build up one set of bits in a video and have the other side magically appear. Headlights first then. There's not too much to them. All we need to do is pop one of the fake LEDs in the hole, sit the white holder on the back with the small slot over the screw hole, and install one of the little self-tappers. Nice and simple, and just that bit nicer than gluing the LEDs in place. The exhaust isn't really any more complicated. The elbow at the bottom needs a cover plate sitting in position and the 2 screws fitting to hold it together. I found the screws were really rather tight, so be careful not to slip. If you lunch the heads they will be a right pain to extract. So that's done, we just need its pair. Nice. Step 53. The airboxes. We will be needing 4 3x8mm self-tappers, 4 2x8mm self-tappers, 2 of these M3x18s with a hex-shaped head, 2 curved mesh pieces. For the plastic we need Q8 and 11 for one side, and Q9 and 10 for the other, along with two S1s and S2s. So we'll start with Q8, the inside part of one of the boxes. We need to drop one of the hex-headed screws in the middle, which is also hex-shaped to make it into a captive screw. A nice way to do it with no fixings visible from the outside. Next we need an S1 slotted in the slot at the top with the post sticking upwards. Now for the other half, Q11. It sits on the back of Q8, locking the hex-headed screw in place. All we need to do is install two 3x8mm self-tappers. Okay, the last bit then. The grill sits on the top with the gap towards the inside face. Tamiya actually want us to glue it in, but I can't really see why, as it's not going to go anywhere when the lid goes on. It just sits on the top with two of the 2x8mm self-tappers in the holes in the top. Very nice. We'll need to paint the tube when we get to the painting, but that's the airboxes pretty much ready to go. Step 54. This time we need 4 M3x20s, 4 3x15 self-tappers, a single 3x8 self-tapper, the grill, Q4, and 6 M3 flange nuts. For the exhaust stacks we need to pop one of the long M3 screws in each of the holes. They're a very loose fit, so keep hold of them and insert them through the holes in the side of the body. From the inside, install a flange nut on each screw. Unfortunately, the nuts are going to sit on a curved surface, so don't do them up too tight. If you do, you'll distort the plastic. After painting, these will need some thread locks, so they only need to be tight enough that the exhaust won't move around. The airboxes with their captured screws just install on the side with the screw through the small hole and the tube through the big hole. And just like the exhaust, we need to fit a flange nut from the inside. Now for the grill. To keep it in place for the next bit, we can start with a single screw in the middle. Pop the 3x8 self-tapper through the hole in the centre and screw it into the hole in the grill. It just needs to be tight enough to stop the grill from flopping about. For the headlight buckets, we need to position one of them and install two of the long self-tappers. They go through the buckets and its posts, through the body and screw into the grill. Quite a nice way to do it. It holds everything together with the minimum fixings. Step 55/56. For step 55, we're going to wait for the painting stage. They want us to glue the lens assemblies together. Step 56 is similar. There's a bit that fits to the roof that mounts the roof lights. The headlight surrounds need gluing on, and there will be some other bits too, like the old control panel holes in the back, which will need some filling. We can do some of step 57 though. We can fit the dashboard under the windscreen. We can't fit the column and wheel until they're painted, but just having the dash will help show us what the clearances are like. It's simple to install. All we need are two 3x10 self-tappers, one for each hole. They only need to be nipped up a bit, not done up really tight, just enough so the dashboard is held in place. Step 58. Mounting the body. There's not really much to this one. If we were using a 27 or a 40 meg radio with a long antenna, we might want to install the roof mounted antenna, but we're not, so all we need are the 8 M3x6s. The body, after a fair bit of jiggling, drops neatly onto the chassis. Then we just install the M3 screws in the appropriate holes. They don't need to be super tight, just nipped up. If they don't want to line up, you might want to loosen the steel brackets, as mentioned in the last video, and try and get them to line up a bit better. And that's about it really, the body is on. Step 59, lots of shiny bits, most of which are going to need glue, like the wipers and horns, but we can fit the metal exhaust stacks over the plastic bits on the body. I'm not really sure if they're stainless or just something chrome plated. I think I'd err on the side of stainless, but either way they're nicely finished with no sharp edges on the ends. They just push down over the plastic bits on the body. There's no need for any glue as they're a nice tight fit. On the top we've got two sets of S12 and 13 that make up the little angle bits. They really want some glue to hold them together and some black paint to soot up the inside, but for now they're just going to sit up there dry. Step 60, the front bumper. This time we need two M3x10s, 4 2x8mm self-tappers, 2 M3 flange nuts, the bumper D8 and the two funky little S3s. They seem to be lips that are there to protect the edge of the wheel arches. We could also fit one or more of the number plate surrounds. There's loads of guide holes in the back, so getting them in the right spot is easy, but for now we'll just build it up without. The lips line up over some posts near the top edge of the bumper and get two of the 2x8mm self-tappers installed. I think their main goal in life is to make fitting the body that bit trickier. We'll now have to slot the front in and then sit the back of the body down, trying to get it to clear everything on the way. Now the lips are on, we can install the bumper on the chassis. The front chassis brace has a couple of holes in it. We need to pop a screw through the bumper, through the chassis brace, and fit one of the flange nuts on the back. Same with the other one. Do them up nice and tight, and a little thread lock probably wouldn't hurt too, just to really make sure. Step 61, which involves fitting the battery. Seems a little bit odd considering we've not quite finished the build yet. They even appear to have us plug it in. Strange. Step 62, the rear panel of the body. For this we'll need two 3x12mm self-tappers, two 3x8mm self-tappers, two 3x8mm self-tappers, four M2 plain nuts, the last grab rail, P7, the panel itself, and the bits to make up the clips, G3, 7 and 9, two of each. First, just like the ones we did at the beginning, we need to wind a couple of M2 nuts on the handle along with a little bit of thread lock. While that goes off a bit, we can build up the plastic parts. On the inside we want G3 sat in the guide moulded in the panel. On the outside, G7 interlocks with it and sits in its guide. To hold them together, we need to use one of the 3x12mm self-tappers. The trick here is to tighten up the screw so the little assembly can freely move back and forth. When it's fitted to the body, we may need to tweak it a little just to get it to work nicely. The other side is the same. A little loose at this stage is probably a good idea, just in case it gets a bit stuck on the main body. On the bottom edge there's two G9s. These make up the hooks that hold the bottom in. They just sit in the little guides on the inside of the panel and use the 3x8mm self-tappers from the outside. Well, that just leaves the handle, and just like the other ones, it pops in through the two holes and gets the last two M2 nuts fitting. After we've painted it, they will get some thread lock too. To fit the panel, all we do is sit the clips in the holes at the bottom and hinge it forward into the body. It's a very tight fit though. With enough jiggling and a little bit of force, it does pop in. The thing to remember here, after it's all painted, the panel will be ever so slightly bigger, so if it's a tight fit now, it will be a right pain to get in after. While just about everything's been a great fit, this one thing justifies the dry build. When we prep it for paint, we'll need to sand off a tiny bit along the top edge to make it a better fit. Well, that's about it for the manual. The rest talks about option parts, the lighting and the kit contents. So in the next video we're probably going to be winging it. I've got some 3.5 hours of raw footage for the body finishing. I'm not really sure how to edit it down. It will probably end up being 2 videos at least, I reckon. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like if you liked, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment if you're feeling chatty. Bye guys!